Let me tell you, I am so excited about this game against the Falcons this weekend. One, I'm going to the game, which I'm excited to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. First time checking that place out. But also this game should be, a tight matchup. Really two 1-0 teams coming off of, some different types of victories in week 1. And let's go ahead and look at, what should we expect out of these teams in this matchup. So if you're a Packers fan, you know what happened in week 1 against the Bears. Relatively convincing victory, 38-20 over Justin Fields and the Bears. For the Falcons, a 24-10 victory over the Panthers, but the score isn't quite as indicative of how close that game was. Really, even down to the last handful of drives in that game. So let's take a look at how did the Falcons play in week 1. What were they effective at? They were effective running the ball. This team is going to live and die by their run game. They've got two outstanding running backs in Bijan Robinson, who, just looks freakish out there. But they're not putting all of the weight on him just yet. They also have Tyler Algier, and Tyler Algier had an outstanding day against the Panthers as well. So between those two backs, they're going to carry that load. Bring back into the fact that they've got a Cordero Patterson who is just a bit of a weapon overall on offense and on special teams. And, they've got a lot of options to run the ball. They've got some decent pass catchers in, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. The real question with this offense is going to be how far is Desmond Ridder going to take them? In week 1, Desmond Ridder, appeared to do pretty well. He had an 83% completion percentage, completing the majority of his passes, obviously, but he also had the lowest average depth of target in the NFL. He averaged 3 yards per attempt of just, that's the depth of where he was throwing the ball to. His running backs were primarily his targets. His running backs were one of the prime sources of his passing game, really throwing a lot of swing screens or checking the ball down to them. Didn't try to stretch the field down the field much. I believe he only targeted 2 receivers. Only one of them had a catch. Drake London went without a catch in this entire game on 2 targets. And it took until pretty late into the third quarter for Kyle Pitts to get a reception out there. And I think he just had 2 receptions. One of them was easily the deepest throw that Desmond Ridder made of the day. And really that was just kind of like chuck it up and let Kyle Pitts go make a play, which he did, which led to one of their scoring drives, which kind of sealed that game against the Panthers. But another big part of this is their defense. Their defense was pretty opportunistic, if you will, against the Panthers. So a brand new look for the Falcons defense. A lot of new guys. I want to say 6 new starters this year, including a lot in their defensive backfield. And that didn't even include guys like Jeff Okudah, who was injured, who's also a new piece that the Falcons traded for from the Lions, who were familiar with Jeff Okudah over the last few years, who, kind of underperformed but had all of the physical tools to be an outstanding cornerback. So we'll see if he can bounce back. But Jesse Bates, their safety that they picked up from the Cincinnati Bengals in the offseason, that dude had 2 interceptions. And really he was baiting Bryce Young out there on those 2 picks. So I expect he's going to try to do the same thing against Jordan Love, another young, inexperienced quarterback that he's going to be facing. And he's just going to try to, pounce on anything that, Jordan Love sits on. And if he stares down a receiver, those safeties are going to break and try to make a play on it. So I'm excited to see a bit of a different matchup. Their defensive front is pretty good as well, and I think they'll do a better job against the run than the Bears did against the Packers. And, the Bears weren't terrible, but, they've got Grady Jarrett in this front. They got Calais Campbell. They brought in another, pretty big name defensive tackle that they got into the rotation. And, 2 of their guys were among the top pass rush win rates from week 1. So expect a little bit of more of a push up the middle against Jordan Love, and it'll really be a good challenge for the Packers offensive line. So let's kind of look at where do I think they match up against the Packers, position by position. So I think, quarterback, I'm going to give us the edge. Jordan Love performed at just a higher level than Desmond Ridder did last week. Simple as that. I think, they're both young, inexperienced guys. Both have some, pretty decent weapons around them. Granted, Love's weapons are a bit younger. And I think overall the fact that Love kind of has a little bit more free reign in kind of like the playbook isn't limited on where he can go. He can do anything that they have in that playbook. Where on the other hand, I think Desmond Ridder's still kind of getting the reins, held a little bit. And I think that might be a little bit why they didn't try to push the ball down the field a bit more. So Packers have the edge at quarterback. At running back, most of the time, I think the Packers have one of the better tandems in the league. A.J. Dillon didn't perform up to his standard this past week, but the offensive line didn't do him any favors either. I think, I don't think he's down in the dumps as, a lot of fans out there have said, but I think with this young group that the Falcons have, at the very least, this is a push. I'm almost leaning more towards the youth and the dynamic ability of Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier as giving them the edge, but I'm just going to call it a push. On the pass catcher side, the fact that our pass catchers are actually going to be more involved in the game than the Falcons pass catchers, I'm going to give that edge to us. Even with Christian Watson out and a limited Romeo Doubs in week 1, the Packers still spread the ball around. I want to say there was 8 different people that were targeted in this game versus, I believe, 6 if you count Desmond Ridder, because he actually had a ball batted up in the air and he caught his own pass. So didn't spread the ball around a lot, targeted his running backs and tight end more than anybody else in the game. So I think the Packers have the edge at pass catcher. The offensive line groups, the Falcons had an outstanding offensive line last year. It performed pretty well last week as well, but the right side in particular did not perform not nearly as well in pass protection. That right side, I believe it's McGarry, the right tackle, gave up a number of pressures and really didn't set Ridder up for a whole lot of success on some of those passing reps. So I think that's where I'm going to give the Packers the edge over this. The Packers just have such an outstanding line from left to right that most weeks I'm probably banking on the fact that they're going to have the best line group. On the defensive side, I think I'm actually just going to call this a push as well. The Grady Jarretts, the Calais Campbells, they've got quality guys along that line and guys with a bit more experience than the Packers have. And while the Packers performed pretty well in week 1, getting, a lot of pressure, especially great game from Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark was solid as usual. Even, Carl Brooks had a pretty decent showing out there, and our edge group is overall better. What am I saying? Now I'm giving this to the Packers. That edge group that we have, they're not going to stand up against it. So yes, the interior of that defensive line, I'd probably give it a bit more to a push. But when you include the edge into that group, I'm just going to say the edge group goes to the Packers. Rashawn Gary on 12 reps out there had 5 pressures according to PFF. Outstanding day. I think the Packers, Matt LaFleur said, had him charted for 8 pressures in those 12 reps. Like 75% win rate at that point, which is just insane and through the roof. And while I expect that they're probably still going to keep him on a little bit of a snap count this week, expect more of the same, especially if he finds himself aligned on the left side of our defense going up against that right tackle McGarry. Expect him to eat. And I really think a lot of this defensive front is going to have the opportunity, especially with a young quarterback back there. I think he's going to get flustered, and that's going to show in this game. Move on to the linebackers. The Packers linebackers, I think, would have the edge if Quay plays. It's still up in the air going through the concussion protocol after that pick six where he took a bit of a shot from an offensive lineman. Hopefully he's able to get back in time for this game. But I think that's going to be a key to this, run stopping for the Packers defense against, a really good running attack in the Falcons. The defensive backs, I'm going to give it a push. Like, we've got some of the best corners in the league, and they played really well. Even our corners played outstanding in run support, but there were a few things where I think the fact that we're playing against Justin Fields in week one, kind of hid some of the mistakes that could have been made out there. I noticed a couple of spots when I was watching through the game film where there was a bit of a coverage breakdown, but Fields either overlooked the read and went to the check down really quick or just didn't see it altogether. So I think I'm going to make this a push. As I mentioned, they've got 3 new defensive backs, I believe it is, in that backfield that are all brand new to the team. A.J. Terrell's a great cornerback. See if Jeff Okudah can be back for this game and add some depth to that rotation. But the safeties and Jesse Bates out there as a safety is going to try to ball hawk, and I think that's going to be one of the tough spots for this Packers offense. And then special teams is going to be a bit of a push. The Packers' young special teams performed really well in week one, and I think they're going to continue to grow and progress through the year here, and hopefully we, don't have to punt all that much, but when we do, Daniel Whelan had a 68-yard punt in week one, so dude's got a big leg, and I think that's going to help tilt the field position a little bit in our favor. So what are some matchups that I'm really excited to see in this game? One of them, I want to see the Packers defensive front against that offensive line of the Falcons. I really think they're a good unit, but I really want to see if that right side gets it together in pass pro a bit more. They did run block well off that side, but if we can get pressure and just sit in Desmond Ritter's lap all day, he's going to make a mistake somewhere along the way. And while in his 5 starts so far in his NFL career, he hasn't thrown an interception, it's going to change at some point. And this secondary the Packers have are going to be ready to pounce on the opportunities that this defensive front gives them when they force him into, bad throws or mistakes. So look forward to seeing that matchup in particular. And then on the other side of the ball for us, I'm really excited to see just kind of Jordan Love against, I'm going to say the safeties in particular, but really it's just how can Jordan Love manipulate this defense, or can he really? It's going to be that kind of a chess match between the defensive backs and Jordan Love, I think. The protection I expect is going to hold up well enough for Jordan Love to be able to stand back there and deliver, but that defense is going to change its appearances. It's going to shift personnel around, especially when it gets down to like third down positions, and that's going to be where those safeties and linebackers are really going to look to capitalize on just a mistake by Jordan Love out there. Is he going to be able to play a clean game and avoid those kind of mistakes, or is he going to fall victim, similar to Bryce Young, to some of those passes where he's kind of looking down a receiver down the middle of the field and you've got a safety breaking on a ball and picking that thing off? So excited to see that on the offensive side. For me, for the Falcons, the key player in this game, I think, is Kyle Pitts, because while our safety play was pretty decent in week one, I didn't really see Justin Fields rather attack the middle of the field against the Packers, and that's where that safety group in coverage might be a little bit more of a weak spot, especially if Quay Walker isn't out there, who is a big, fast, rangy linebacker in coverage. If they don't have that kind of guy out there alongside Devondre Campbell at that, I think it's going to make the middle of the field a bit more open. And if they can get the ball to Kyle Pitts, that dude is dynamic. So I want to see that. And then on the Packers side, tying right back into that, I think the key is going to be Devondre Campbell, because while we don't know what the status of Quay Walker is, if he's out, I believe he was the play caller for the Packers defense last week. They've seen him more in a lot of those kind of penny sets where he is the lone linebacker out on the field. If Campbell has to come back in, I have no doubt that he's going to come in and be able to do the play calls just fine. But if he's out there and he's the only linebacker that we have, that's really a solid coverage linebacker, it's gonna put a lot of pressure on him. But then the run fits as well. Like, he's gonna have to shoot his guns and make the right read on this running game, because Bijan Robinson, if you give him any kind of space, he is shifty, elusive, and on top of that, he's not a small back either. He's 220-ish pounds or whatever, but he moves insanely well for that size. So expect, a big game from the linebackers, or expect the Falcons to run the ball all over us. I'm hoping for the former rather than the latter, but that's kind of where I'm looking at for that. As I look at predicting this game, let's real quick look at what the odds are out there. So at one point, the Packers had were 1-point favorites in this game. Over the last couple days, things have shifted a bit, and now we're 1.5-point underdogs in the betting markets. So I'm not entirely sure what shifted there, but I still think I'm going Packers on this one, and I think the final score is going to be 21-17. It's going to be a hard-fought battle throughout the game. It's going to really come down to just who can avoid those mistakes, and I think the Packers offensive line is going to do a better job protecting their young quarterback than the Falcons offensive line is going to do against our, aggressive and disruptive defensive front for the Packers. So at the end of this, we're going to learn so much about both of these teams and see if they're really going to be in the running in the NFC, which is pretty wide open still, or if we're going to kind of see some struggles out there and see if week one was just a fluke. So make sure to check back after the game. I'll bring you some analysis after the game and talk about our next matchup and going into week 3.